So I have a friend that a flood came to her apartment. She and her girlfriend share. And, it was a big flood, and they lost a lot of their stuff. And not everything, but, they lost a good amount of stuff, and they have to move. So as people do, she posted it on Facebook. And, the responses were very natural responses, especially that you get in social media. And, there were probably like 50 people that immediately were like, oh my God, that's so horrible. That's terrible. Oh, what a bummer. Feel so sorry for you. Terrible, terrible disaster. Some of them, because it's Mars retrograde and lots of anger flying around, were even like, oh, I hate the world. I hate floods. Screw this. I mean, these became this repository for people's energy, which, I think most of it was well-intentioned. But there were a couple of us in the midst of that, literally maybe in the midst of 100 responses. We both had the same reaction of like, oh my God, this really did happen because something else is going to be coming. Like this happened for a reason. And so it was interesting because I, ended up not dismissing the horror of a flood, but sort of saying, I really sense something is about to happen. And this other woman had the same hit. I was laughing. I said, oh, I bet she read OO. And it turned out she had, she like immediately was like saying, this seeming tragedy has happened for a reason. And basically what started to come out is that my friend, the two of them have really wanted to leave for a long time. And they've just been in this entropy. And so now there are two different places that, we'll see which one they get, that are infinitely better than what they had before the flood. And they're going to be moved. But the other piece of that story is that the same day that I heard about their flood, I was visiting with a different friend in person, and I had never seen her house before. And she and her husband have this amazing, amazing home. And somehow in the middle of my visit, she goes, do you want to know the story of how we got this house? And she proceeded to tell me, because these are not people with much money, And she basically said that about 10 years ago, they really needed a place to live. And everybody, as people do, were saying, you guys don't have anything. You're never going to be able to buy a home. You're never going to, you better just, give up now, blah, blah, blah. But one thing led to another, and they found this really kind of like falling apart cabin that they could afford to buy. And it happened to be on some really beautiful land, but the house was falling apart. They bought it. The one thing they invested money in was a really good homeowner's insurance policy. And what basically happened about, a year and a half after living in this falling apart cabin is there was a fire. The entire place burnt down. They lost most of their stuff. Again, the same people who had said, you'll never be able to buy anything, you'll never have a home, those same people came back around now, and they were like, oh my God, this is such a tragedy. This is so horrible. You guys have the worst luck. I feel so sorry for you, blah, blah, blah. Well, basically what happened is because of the fire and their one extravagance, which was his homeowner's policy, they had everything covered to build the home of their dreams. On top of that, they had housing covered for 4 years as the house was built. So here were these people that basically had nothing. And there I was sitting in, this on the deck of their place. It was really like being in, you would think it was just like being in heaven. And the story of how this house came to them, and I'm not minimizing this tragedy of being in a fire, But their attitude, these are both very spiritual people, and so their attitude through the whole thing kept being, every step of the way, you have no idea where we may be being led. Every step of the way, when they didn't know where they were going to get a home in the first place, they just kept saying, we have no idea where we're being led. We trust that the universe has a plan. Then when the fire happened, again, we have no idea where we're being led. We trust that the universe has a plan. And every step of the way, they really had to protect themselves from all the fear and negativity and anxiety that other people naturally feel, because we live in a culture that trains everybody to think that way. And so I just wanted to share this because, I think especially under Mars retrograde, you may have no idea where you're being led. You also may have no idea how seeming obstacles, delays, and losses may be guiding you. In the case of my one friend with the flood, I have no doubt they are going to end up in a place far, far better than what brought the flood. And part of why I know that is because the day I heard about their flood, I was sitting on the deck of this other friend hearing the story about the fire. And so what I think is an incredible spiritual practice is learning how to hold that state. And I don't mean denying tragedy or the fears or the natural feelings that come up when you're in it. But if you have that ability, which hopefully this forum and using these practices will give you, to be able, no matter what you're seemingly in, to call in the divine plan, as opposed to going into everything you're surrounded by, which is victimization, anger, resentment, everything. I'm not saying don't feel those feelings. I'm not saying deny them, but get through them. Go break bottles, get it out, and then get back to that state that couple were able to go back into, which is, we don't know where we're being led. We just trust we are going to somehow end up with exactly what's divinely ordained. And that holding of that vibration, it's the holding of a high vibration in the midst of chaos and in the midst of everybody else's negativity. So, when you have, as part of really why the forum was created in part, is so that people can also help uplift each other, which I often think does happen. You get people that have really learned to hold this state. They're able to not just go, oh, life sucks, it's all bad. And they're able to hold that state and go, wait a minute, hold on. You have no idea where this could be guiding you. That fire took them to ending up in this amazing home. That flood is going to end up taking my other friends to a far better place. It's like so many losses, so many breakups, so many things that if you just listen to the regular world, the regular consciousness of that world, you're going to get messages like, oh, your relationship broke up. Wow, that sucks. Life sucks. Relationships are bad. If you take all that in, all it's going to do is reaffirm every horrible message you got from an insane culture. If you have people around you who know how to hold that state that says you have no idea where you may be being led from this,